Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Shenanigans with Shreya podcast. We have a guest today. So, joining me today is actually a friend from school, and we've reconnected over the last few years. And now she is a qualified psychotherapist and counselor. Yashika, welcome to
Thank
the
you.
show.
You're 14? That's so long
Exactly.
ago.
It has been, I think, like 2013,
Yes.
2014 is when we met. So, 12 years
Yeah.
ago, which is
Yeah.
crazy. How have you been?
I've been really good. It's so nice to be back in the same country, even though we haven't met yet, but we will make it
We
happen.
will, 100%. So before we kind of get into the main podcast episode, I wanted to ask, 12 years ago, we were like students, still in secondary school, that kind of thing. So when did you realize that you wanted to be a therapist and wanted to help people with their emotions?
I mean, I wouldn't say it's like a one moment decision. I would say it started when we were in school together because, like, when I was in school, like, I was always the kind of friend in a friend group who everyone would gravitate towards every time they had a problem. And I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed being there for my friends through their emotional struggles. The more I studied psychology and read books about it, the more fascinated I was by learning about human behavior. And I just wanted to learn more and understand human behavior, their motivations, and all these kind of things. And the more I studied it and experienced it, the more I fell in love with it.
Aw, that's lovely. I'm kind of the same where like learning more about the human mind, because I do neuroscience, which is basically in the same thread as like psychology. So it's just so fascinating. And we don't know so much about the brain, which makes it even more fascinating to learn about because
Yeah.
emotions are complex, the brain is complex. And I've always actually been meaning to ask, I guess, a therapist in your practice and, case studies you might have dealt with or clients that you've met, what is the most, I'd say, unexpected or most interesting story that you've had? Obviously with confidentiality, but like what did that
Yeah.
person's situation teach you about the human experience essentially?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I would say like there's just one case that comes to my mind, and it's one of my very first clients. And basically, they had depression and they were like struggling to express, and like they really needed therapy and wanted therapy, but then like the traditional talk therapy wasn't working out so much because it was so difficult for them to articulate into words and express. But they were really into music, and they used to play guitar and compose their own music, and they express through music basically. And I have no background in music as such. I mean, I listen to music, but that's about it. So I was just so determined to like make sure that they get something out of therapy. So I was like, why don't you come and express, like show your music to me and we'll take it from there, like express whatever you're feeling through your music. And they did that. And I was actually so surprised to know that despite like not having previous background in like analyzing music or just working in that way, I was just like fascinated to know that because I was so attuned to them, I was able to pick up on themes or pick up on what's going on for them. And yeah, that actually did help. And what it taught me about human experience is that how much of a difference it makes just to be held and understood by another person. And that's one of the core ideas by Carl Rogers. He's the founder of humanistic therapy. That's the one I specialize in.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
When you said that, it reminded me of a quote that I've seen a lot. It's like to be loved is to be seen. So in a way, it's like regardless of whether it's, platonic, romantic, whatever, but I think as a human connection is just to be seen by another human being, to be like, I understand that I'm here for
Yeah.
you, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And not
Um,
being trying to like fix it or anything, but
mhm.
just like holding space for someone and just deeply feeling their pain or whatever they're going through, and just like just being there is just so magical.
Exactly, like letting it be and like
Yeah.
sitting with that emotion. Oh, I love that. And also, I wanted to ask because, there must be a variety of things that people come to you for, like,
Mhm.
for therapy. So, in your experience, what is like the most common thing that they come to you? Like, is there a pattern with what you're dealing with or?
I mean, I wouldn't say like a pattern, but yeah, obviously there are common themes, and just like it also depends on age group because I've worked across different age groups. I've worked with school children, I've worked with like retired people and everything in between. So yeah, I would say that with their age, whatever the common themes of concern are, like for children or young people, it can just be about like having difficulties with parents, rules and boundaries and friendship groups and things like that. And then when it comes to like university students, just like not knowing what is happening with their careers, just uncertainty, the 20s. And then after that, it's all just like work and, like identity. But like one common theme among all of them is relationships. And that is what I'm also specializing on. I'm specializing more in couples therapy, but relationships is the aspect of psychology that really fascinates me. And it's my favorite part. So like whether it's conflict management or just any relational issues, I love working with that.
Oh, that's so cool. Because I was actually going to lead this into adult relationships because you did mention when we were talking about how our childhood shapes so much of like our adult experience with like people in general. So, I mean, I look at that specifically from like a brain wiring situation, but I wanted to ask you psychologically in terms of like, maybe attachment styles and things like that. How does your childhood make the blueprint for when you're older and how you deal with things, basically?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's like unmet needs from everyone's childhood. There's some unmet needs, and I definitely do think that we try to fulfill those unmet needs through our adult relationships. And also, just like we get a sense of what love is to us, what it means. Like we define love based on our childhood, whether it's the push pull dynamic, whether it's emotional availability, whether it's aggressiveness. And we kind of look at love that way, that this is what love is. So whenever we go into our adult relationships, we kind of go looking for that because that's what love and home feels like.
Yeah, because that's familiar to you
Yeah,
essentially. Yeah. Have you actually read the book Attached? It's I
I have actually. Yeah,
Yeah, because I read it last year and it's so mind-opening and I really think everyone should read that book
it
because
really is.
it has like those little questionnaires in them and asking you like how you deal with certain things and then, it tells you about like anxious avoidance styles and all of that. There's a common theme in all of those kind of books where they're trying to get you to go to a more like secure, healthy
Hmm.
communication style, which I think
Yeah,
is really cool. And I think also from a kind of neuroscientific perspective, there's this whole thing that if you are, let's say, like anxious, you have a different part of your brain, like, the amygdala, the fear
yeah,
center in
yeah,
the brain, it
yeah,
starts getting like hyperactive. And with avoidant people, it's kind of the same thing where they have reduced activation in certain parts of their brain because they're closing off themselves to processing
yeah. It gets
information.
overwhelming. Yeah.
Exactly. And then with like secure attachment styles, they've literally shown that their prefrontal cortex is able to modulate the amygdala's
Hmm.
activity. So it prevents it from going too hyperactive and overreactive. So they're able to, I guess, process that information in a healthy way, which is
Yeah.
really like interesting to see from that perspective. And I wanted to ask you actually, what do you recommend or would suggest to move into a more secure attachment style, like some habits or ways of processing things?
First of all, before we go into that, I wanted to say that I really love the book and like it
Mm-hmm.
has helped me work on my attachment style as well. But I do have like one small critique is that obviously there's a push towards like going towards a secure attachment style. But that book also talks about how there's like more than 50% people who are securely attached, which I do not believe in based on my experience of the world. But yeah, I do think that like the secure attachment, like I see it as a spectrum of secure
Mm-hmm.
and insecure. And obviously you try to move towards secure, but if you kind of put it as like the goal of perfection that you have to
Mm-hmm.
achieve, it kind of puts a lot of pressure on you to reach an unattainable standard in a way. And yeah, I just think like we should take it with a grain of salt and like put it as a standard, like as a spectrum rather than
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, I have to completely change. But yeah, I would say that like it's different for different attachment styles, but the common theme would be like identifying what your reactions are coming from. And usually they're coming from a place of unmet needs and fears and trying to address them in different ways and also being really honest about them because we have the very core themes of like conflict or attachment is just having those like fears and unmet needs but not being able to be vulnerable with them for the fear of abandonment. Because if you see like any insecure attachment style, there's like an underlying fear of abandonment. It just manifests in a different way in different attachment styles. So yeah, just like I've read this somewhere, it was worded so well that like you're so afraid of being abandoned that you're not vulnerable because you would be abandoned, but the punishment for not being vulnerable is the fact that you get abandoned.
Oh, that's so good, actually. Love, like, that's a very well phrased sentence as well, because I actually recently, I had a situation where it was the same, let's say, overall topic, and two people, because I was saying something like about how I felt about a situation, and
Mhm.
two people dealt with that in a very different way. And I was like, it's such a stark difference on like the way that people can deal with emotions, I guess. Because one of them was like quite secure, quite, I'd say, direct with communication in that sense where they weren't scared of like expressing their feelings, and it was a very like wholesome conversation which ended with like, oh well, we're on the same page, we're all chill, that kind of thing. And then the
Yeah.
second person, identical situation, but they've become quite I'd say, dismissive of it. It's like they don't want to acknowledge it. They don't want to talk about it. They're actively like avoiding everything to do with it. And I was like, that's so interesting because I saw this like last week in real time and I was like, wow, it's insane how the same situation can have such different reactions within people. And I think the theory of like attachment styles are just so interesting to me as well. And I wanted to kind of go into a subtopic within that. So when we were talking about this earlier, you mentioned how, love can feel quite, easy at first. There's this whole like honeymoon phase in the
Yeah.
beginning of like dating. And then, there's the marriage part of it where it can become hard or more difficult to maintain that level of like quote unquote love in that sense. So why do you think like psychologically there's that thing where desire can die in long-term relationships? Why is that so?
I mean, there's a lot of reasons why it can become difficult. If we're like speaking specifically about desire, there's this one thing that Esther Perel says. She's a really good psychologist. I really look up to her. And she says that like love requires closeness, but desire requires distance. Because when there's an otherness element in a relationship, that's what makes you attract to the other person. But when there's too much enmeshment, there's almost always a problem with desire. And even in other aspects, like other things other than desire, just the fact that like love is easier in the beginning is just there's so much oxytocin and dopamine and those intensity of feelings, and all feelings fade. Feelings are never permanent. So like when the intensity of the feeling of love fades and you've been kind of counting on that and building your relationship on the foundation of a feeling, which is fickle, it obviously fades. But at the end of the day, if you want to make things work long term, whether it's marriage or like living together, partnership kind of thing, it has to have sustained effort, because effort is what's going to carry you through. So I think that's really important. And just like after you are in a marriage or like a civil partnership or whatever, like there's so many different things that change. There's families involved, there's responsibilities and logistics. It's not just two people with their individual lives. It's like one life, and there's so much more that goes on. Like to keep the love alive and to make the relationship sustain the pressures of time in life, you have to take a lot more effort.
Yeah, period. Because when I was looking into this, I noticed a few like facts which I thought were really interesting, and I'd like to share them. They were saying like at the very start of like getting to know someone, that sort of, quote unquote honeymoon phase that's there, it's because it's really like dopamine driven. But obviously after some time, especially I'd say towards like the end of that honeymoon phase, dopamine starts to go down, and then you start to bond more because you're more comfortable. So you have an increase in oxytocin. But what's interesting is that like dopamine and oxytocin can't really coexist a lot at the time. Like they need to be like kind of in cycles in a way. If you have too much oxytocin, you'll feel low on dopamine. It make you feel quote unquote disconnected because you're like, oh, I don't feel the thrill that I used to feel anymore, but I still feel bonded to this person. So it's like an interesting, I'd say, human emotion to go through. What I read and I came across was that the best way to kind of re-trigger that dopamine to feel, that sense of happiness and love in that capacity again is to try new things together and have that novelty, experiences, which will help to rebuild and restructure that bond again.
That's so true. And like so many people have this like fading novelty in relationships. They're like, oh, I know my partner too well. There's nothing to talk about. But I don't think so. Like a human experience is so intricate and deep that I don't think we can ever fully know another person. And there's so much curiosity and love in just being curious and wanting to keep knowing the other person more. And like there's novelty in an old relationship of 30 years if you keep asking each other questions and being curious about their experience, and coming from a place of this is another person, don't assume their experience, just ask them more and get to know them more. There's so much intimacy and novelty in that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's always stuff to be shared. It could be like the mundane things in your day or just like how you're feeling. And I think those are all pointers that will help you bond with anyone, really. It's like if you share things, it becomes like a joint human experience in a way. So it is quite nice. So yeah, we love to see that. Now, I wanted to play a little game of rapid fire with you because I've done this with my guests previously. So whatever, first thing comes to mind, don't think too much about it. So the biggest red flag on a first date.
This is very controversial, but like one person having to pay.
We have spoken about this.
You have an episode
Oh,
about this,
wait,
surely.
I need to tangent a little bit because I agree with you. I don't think it should be just on the one person and expecting just one person to pay as well. Like, guys, both of you are involved in this. Like, it's a
Yeah.
50-50 joint effort. Like, and usually they expect the guys to pay, and I'm like, come on, like, this is
Yeah.
not right, guys. Come on.
Yeah,
But
I
yeah,
don't think
I'm
I've
glad we
ever
share.
expected a guy to pay for anything for me. So no, like it is again like a very controversial opinion in today's day and age, but no, that is like a red flag for me.
Exactly, yes. And what is one green flag that you think people overlook sometimes?
That is a really good question. I don't think it's a rapid fire question though.
Oh, whatever
Um,
comes to mind.
yeah, I suppose thoughtfulness, just like noticing small things that you like. Say if I passingly say I like purple and someone buys me a lot of purple things, which has happened by the way. So yeah, that is a very
Oh,
good
yay.
green flag. Yeah.
That's nice. That's nice. What is the best mindfulness hack you think there is?
Um, mindfulness hack. I don't know, staying present. I
Staying
mean,
present.
that's what mindfulness is, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. These questions are slightly like on the heavier side, so don't be pressurized to say like rapid fire. You can say as much as you want. Um,
Also, look, purple pen. I got this, and it has like a pop-up heart because
aw,
it is purple.
that's so cute. So, is closure a real thing, or do we just move on?
That is again not a yes and no answer for me. I think some people do need the closure. Closure for different people means different things. Some people need to know why it happened, and for some people, just knowing that it happened is closure enough that they don't want to deal with why it. Like it doesn't matter why, but if the fact that it happened is enough for them. So I think closure means different things for different people, and that's okay.
Yeah. If you could put one sentence on a billboard for everyone to see, what would it say?
There's no shame in asking for help.
Period. That's a great one. And one book recommendation that everyone should read.
Ah, this is so good. Maybe you should talk to someone by Laurie Gottlieb.
Hmm.
And it's like a fun book. Like it is therapy related, obviously, but it's written for someone who has no background of psychology whatsoever. And it has 5 case studies, and she is the therapist in those 5 studies. And in the sixth one or the fifth one, she's the client, and then her journey through therapy. And it's all like intertwined together. And it is very good storytelling with a mixture of like life skills thrown in through the stories. And it's
Aw.
really fun.
Oh, I will keep that for my own
Yeah.
recommendation as well. Thank you. Nature or nurture? What do you think is more powerful?
Nurture.
Nurture. I agree.
Yeah.
And what's one thing you'd like to tell your school self again if we were to go back 12 years? What would you say?
I would say everything will work out and you will work for things. And I don't know, like you're going to be a cool kid, not in the way that you think right now is cool. Because I always thought that I wasn't a cool kid, but like right now I think I'm super cool. And like the things that when you were back in school were like cool was to not care and all these things. And I care too much. And no, I think like now that I've grown up, I think that being sweet, caring, kind, on feeling too much, being sensitive, all these things are really cool and they're superpower. But back when I was younger, it was not cool.
Yeah, no, I get what you mean. So own that. Because I'm kind of the same where it's like I am quite sensitive. And I'd say even also like when we were young, there was this image of like the cool kids would be the ones who, as you said, not care about
Yeah.
anything and stuff. So I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, I think everyone is cool in their own way. It's pretty cool to see how everyone grows into their own, full person essentially.
Yeah,
But
also, I was thinking
mhm,
when you were asking nature, nurture, like I was
mhm,
going to say more because you are into neuroscience and stuff, that
mhm,
like neuroplasticity is why I think nurture is more important. And that's like such an overlooked part of psychology, I think, and even neuroscience, like how
mhm.
important neuroplasticity is and how much of a difference it makes. Just to believe in that and just like if things are not going well and you are not the person you want to be, neuroplasticity is on your side, dude. Like
Exactly.
you're going to make it.
Exactly. No, that's the thing. I think schools should actually genuinely teach this into some sort of like curriculum to be like, you can shape your future and just you
Yes.
as a person by literally deciding that you want to do something. Because
Yeah.
when you decide and focus in, like your brain will subconsciously start focusing in on those things. There's a whole book on like the neuroscience of manifestation, which I can't remember the name of, but it's a really interesting book because it's like scientifically explaining how even though manifestation sometimes sounds like this whole like woo
Woo
woo sort of thing, but there's genuine like science backed behind it because the
Yeah.
way you dress and like your habits, all of that, like you're building up to be the person that you want to be, and you can always change if you don't want to continue being the way that you are. So it's like you have that within yourself, and then
Yeah.
our neurons are just changing our whole life. Like they're not static. So it's really
And
interesting,
it's
as
so
you said.
empowering.
Exactly. It's like you own your life and you own your
Yeah.
story. So
Yeah.
go do that, guys. Go do that. Do something just like out of the box, have some fun. Just like know that you're not stuck ever, because you literally physically can't be stuck in anything, you know? So
Yeah.
there's always a way out of whatever you're
Yeah,
in.
and you never have to do it alone. You can always ask for help, whether it's friends, family, a therapist, or just whatever. Like, you can always ask for help and rely on people, because you were never meant to do everything by yourself.
Exactly. We need a sense of community, because I actually remember reading about like longevity in different societies, and there's like the blue zones across the world. And
Yeah.
in Japan specifically, they have this like one town where it's just old people, and it's just like their sense of community, and they celebrate their birthdays together and mow the lawn together. And it was so cute. And I was like, community genuinely does contribute to like your overall satisfaction with life, and it contributes to longevity. And like, guys, community is just so strong as like a
I
thing to
know.
live by.
There's this study by Harvard, and it's the longest study on happiness ever. And it like follows a lot of people through decades, basically, to kind of see who turns out to be really happy and what factors they have in their lives that make them so happy. And there's one single factor that stands out. And it's probably like an 80, 90-year-old study, okay? Like they've done it for that long. And the one thing that stands out the most is the quality of your relationships, and like how much close relationships impact your sense of well-being and your happiness and life in general. And when we're younger, we end up chasing like fame, success, money, and all of these things are important, and they give us certain things, and they're important. I'm not negating them, but like the thing that dominates them all is relationships. And if you're sacrificing your relationships for them, you're not going to end up being happy.
Exactly. Say it louder for everyone in the back. Because I remember actually with like longevity things and like relationships, a lot of the times people can get so locked in and focused in on their like career or whatever it is, and then they don't do a good job at like maintaining their relationship. So I think it's important to kind of strike a balance, because you can have a really good career, but then if you have no one to celebrate it with, you know what I mean, like around you, what is the point? Because as humans, we are socially primed, and we need connection a lot of the times to amplify our emotions in a good way. So it is, I think, really important. And something that I've actually done to initiating conversations or just like staying in contact with my friends is on my calendar, I have like a monthly check-in thing with like, if I've seen someone, like I will check in with them 4 weeks later and be like, hey, can we meet up? Just so that I keep in contact and not let that
because
fizzle
like
out.
life gets busy, and we have so much going on that it becomes so easy to kind of drift apart. But like, it's so important to kind of put that intentionally out there, that no, like this is important, and prioritize that.
Yeah, and we have like internet now. Like I think the olden days it would be more difficult to, you know, maintain a long distance friendship or whatever. But now it's like you can text them, you can send them a meme, you can have a video call online or something like that. So just guys, stay connected. That's the overall arch of this. But thank you so much. That is the end of today's episode. Do you have any parting thoughts?
It was just really fun to do this with you.
Thank you for being here.
Later on.
Bye.
Bye.